Hey, what's up, guys? It's ExMormon with My Spiritual Life. I know I sound awful right now. I'm just getting a little bit sick. I have so much I want to talk about, and honestly, I haven't been this nervous to do a video for a while because this subject is so tender to me, and especially because this week has been really hard. Some of you may have seen me talk about on some of my social media that last week, some of my extended family members who I hadn't had the chance to talk to about my beliefs yet found my YouTube channel. So they had to find out the hard way that I'm ex-Mormon now. And it was just a very, very difficult situation for everyone involved. It was really, really hard for me. It was really, really hard for them. And it just all around 300% sucked. And so, I don't know. I just have a lot of emotions around all of this, and especially today talking about, advice for those who are fresh into their faith transition. So just bear with me with my voice and with this week being a rough one, and I'm just going to try to put my heart out there and tell you what's been on my mind on this topic. Oh, and I really should add that a lot of extended family members have reached out to me with kindness, and that has meant a lot because I never wanted to hurt anyone in doing this channel. Yeah. This this is difficult. Okay. So kind of getting into my advice that I have for you guys today. And the first thing I want to talk about is, kind of just what the faith crisis journey is like. And I will say it's like hell. It is, I guess I'm getting to a point where I can at least appreciate some of the beauty in it all. But when I think about and reflect on the last year and a half, it's just heavy, it's just a lot of fear, a lot of pain, a lot of confusion, and it's just hard. It's like the church, when I felt like I couldn't view it as true anymore, it felt like someone who had always been there for me my whole life had just died. And this is no disrespect to anyone who's lost close people, but it's just it's like that comfort and that safety, that entity that was always there. It's like it's tainted, and it's just painful and frustrating and hurtful. I'm gonna say that there's twofold reasons why it's so hard leaving the church, and the first is that you had a lot of good experiences in it growing up, probably, or a lot of bad, right? And maybe it was a mix. For me, it was a lot of good experiences. So when I felt like the church wasn't true anymore, I was mourning the loss of those good experiences. You know what I mean? And then on the flip side, if you've had a lot of bad experiences in the church, then you're probably going to feel a lot of anger and resentment and frustration over being treated a certain way, or being told certain things that turned out not to be true. And then I think the second reason why it's so difficult to leave the church is because of the reaction of your friends and family, who might be very Mormon and might be very judgmental of your decisions. Those two things combined, that can just crush you. You know what I mean? Between the feeling mad about the things that, you kind of felt like you were wronged in your life, and then feeling hurt by the good things you feel like you've lost, and then feeling like judgment and isolation from family members and friends, holy fuck, excuse me. It's just a mess, and it's hard. And I'm especially feeling it this week because, I know that there's a lot of people that will never really understand my perspective. And it's you just have to be okay with that. And it can just be hard, If you're new into this faith transition, or maybe even considering a faith transition, one piece of advice I would give to you is just be open to the truth. Because, when you're scared and you're afraid that the church is true, then you don't even want to look at any other information out there, right? And to me, like, what helped me was remembering, like, whether this church is true or not, it's going to be true regardless of the information that I find. Like, there's a quote by, I forget who it was. One of the apostles had said, like, this church, if it's true, it can't be hurt by investigation, and if it can, it should be, basically. In life, we're all just seeking truth, And when it comes down to it, you can be exposed to all sorts of information about the church and still believe that it's true and still live a happy life in the church, and that's okay. But at the same time, I think that if certain information is driving you in a different direction, that's okay too. For me, I remember I got to a point where I was scared that the church was true, and I was scared that it wasn't. But there were certain things that I felt like I would have to accept as true if I were to accept the church as true, that I felt like my heart wasn't in it, in those specific aspects. And then on the flip side, I felt like, who am I without this church? Like, this is all I've ever been. This is all I've ever known. And like, I don't know if I'm a good person without this church. And that's like a scary place to be in. Man, really serious video today, guys. But I guess what I kept coming back to in my mind was that we all want to look for truth. And we're all going to spend this entire life on a journey for truth. And you shouldn't feel afraid of what that truth will be. Because truth is truth, whether you want to know it or not. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. My next piece of advice is find resources that can help you through this journey. I have a list of resources. I'm going to put links to all of this down in the description. Some of these are resources I have used and some aren't, but they're ones that I've heard really good things about. So my first resource list is Reddit. Reddit is an online forum, group thing, whatever you call it. And basically, like, they have different groups you can join where you can actually anonymously, like, if you make your username anonymous, you don't have a profile picture or anything like that, and you can just kind of put your feelings out there and vent. It's awesome, and you don't have to worry about it hurting anyone that you love or anything like that. It's a great place, especially if you are like the only one in your family that's ex-Mormon, you want somewhere to talk. So Reddit has several groups you can join. There's ExMormon, there's ExSistersinZion, there's ExMo_women. I'm in all of those groups and they're all awesome. So then there's Facebook. Some people are a little more apprehensive about joining Facebook groups because even though they may be set to closed or private or whatever, people are still nervous about, like, if someone else is going to see them and out them to other family members. Totally understand. But just know that these groups are closed generally so that what you're putting out there isn't going to everyone. And most people in these groups are super awesome, super supportive, super helpful. I've gotten a lot of help and support from those groups, so thank you. So there's Mormon Stories podcast community, Mormon Enlightenment, and ExMormon. Those are just a few. There's a lot more. Yeah, so then there's podcasts. Listening to podcasts was something that helped me a lot in my journey because when you're fresh into this faith journey, you need a lot of support. You need a lot of validation, and you need to know that you're not the crazy one because you feel like you are, and it sucks. You're not, like when it gets down to it, we're all crazy. Mormons are crazy. Ex-Mormons are crazy. It's okay. It's just learning to be okay with your brand of crazy and realizing that you are worthy of love and acceptance regardless of your brand of crazy. So some podcasts that have really helped me: Mormon Stories by John DeLynn, A Year of Polygamy by Lindsay Hansens Park, Wanna Be Balanced Mom by Crystal Escobar, Infants on Thrones. Those are all great resources for sure. So just getting back to some advice, find someone to talk to that's not your Mormon people, because when you're leaving the church, You may have a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, a lot of questions, and running at your Mormon people with that is going to scare the shit out of them, and it may it may just burn bridges. Honestly, it sucks. Like, I remember talking initially to a certain family member about some issues I was having, and then realizing that it was starting to really severely damage the relationship. And that broke my heart, because I want to be open and honest about all my thoughts and feelings. But I also have to recognize that Mormons are often coming from a very big place of fear around anything that looks bad on the church. And that's not a diss on them, because they're just living out the truth that they've learned. But when they have a lot of fear around it, they can make you feel worse, and then you can be upset with each other, and it can just be a really bad situation. So I've listed those resources. Those are great places to find people to talk to. Even if it's just on a Facebook Messenger or on Reddit forums, like, you need to vent out your feelings. You need to vent out that frustration, those questions, just any insecurities. You need to get it out there so that you can heal and move forward. But running at your Mormon friends and family with this kind of stuff it can often lead to disaster. Not always, but just be careful. Be patient with yourself and your emotions is my next piece of advice. Because I swear I made the decision to leave the church like 18 times. Like, literally. Like, I remember I told myself so many times, like, this is the last time I'm getting off the fence. And I'm not going to lie, like, I still find myself, like, there's a part of me that still hopes that somehow I'm going to find out all along that the church really was true. Because I grew up immersed in this, and that's, my brain is still in that place in a lot of ways, and it's hard dealing with that. But you got to be patient with yourself and realize that this is just part of the journey, and it's hard. But it's okay. And I don't think any of it's unhealthy to any emotions or thoughts or feelings you got to feel. You got to do that, and it will get better over time. It will get a lot better. Like, I am so happy in my life right now. Like, I love my life, and I am very glad the way that things have played out. Even though it's been so painful, I am so glad that things have happened in the way that they have, because it's brought me to a place where I feel a lot more happiness, a lot more security, and I feel good about myself as a person because I want to, and not because of any kind of checklist someone handed me. My next piece of advice is be patient and have as much empathy as you can with those people in your life that are still in the church. And it's hard, because it's hard to be empathetic toward their side, because going through a faith crisis is so hard on you. It's hard to think about how it's hard on them. Oh, everyone's being so rude to me and judgmental and all this, and but you just got to remember they're just living out their story. And just because they don't see you the way that you want them to see you doesn't mean that that's truth. That's just their truth. And it's the truth that they're living by, and that's on them, And it's also, it's the truth they didn't ask for either, And so it's like, even though it's so, so, so hard on you when you leave, you have to try to remember and come from a place of love and empathy that it's so, so hard on them. I remember when a certain family member of mine left the church, that I was so upset. This was when I was still in. I was so upset and angry and frustrated, and I just didn't get it, And I couldn't even bring myself to think wow, that family member must be having a really hard time, because I was so caught up in my pain. It's easy on both sides to get caught up in the pain and to forget just being kind and loving and empathetic. It's hard. It really is hard. I had another family member conversation recently where this family member reached out to me and basically said, listen, I love you so much. I care about you so much. And I want to support you in everything, but I can't support you in this. And I just said, look, thank you. I love you too. And I don't need your support. I just need you to be my family member. And that is enough for me. You have always been there for me, and that is enough for me. I don't need you to be okay with this. I just feel like I've seen a lot more come out of me trying to be loving and kind than me trying to be angry and frustrated and like, why don't you guys get it? Because that's your initial reaction, is like, you just want to take the CS letter, show it to everyone and be like, look, like, you can be free too, and look, like, you should be really mad because of what so-and-so said and all this, and like, oh man, it's just like, it's so hard because you just want to throw it all out there at them, but it just doesn't help. Like, and it burns those bridges, like I said earlier, to a point that like when they really might be struggling with their faith or might have questions, they might not want to come to you because they think that you're this, biased person. It's a hard situation, and this is a much longer video than I intended. My next piece of advice is give yourself a break sometimes. And what I mean by that is that when you're fresh into this transition, you want validation so bad. You're like listening. For me, I was listening to podcasts like all day long and like watching every piece of information that I could find, reading everything I could get my hands on, and just like, it was very, very overwhelming to my brain. And I think I needed that for some time. I needed that because I was your world's falling apart, But don't be afraid to maybe give yourself a break and say, okay, for this next hour, I'm just going to watch some crappy reality TV show so that my brain can deflate a little bit. So give yourself a break, when you need it, and do nice things for yourself, because this is really hard. My next piece of advice is to journal. I've heard of some studies that talk about where when you're writing down your thoughts, like, your brain has an easier time like organizing the information and like coping with it. So journaling is a great thing, and especially because, you don't ever have to worry about offending anyone in your journal, assuming you don't have any snoopers in your house, of course. And yeah, just really putting your feelings and thoughts out there just honestly and beautifully, because it could really help you kind of move forward in a lot of ways. And even to track your progress, to kind of look back and remember like where you've been, is a really beautiful thing. Like, I'm really lucky I have this YouTube channel to kind of go back and reflect on a lot of things, and yeah, it's definitely a really cool experience. These next two pieces of advice, I think Zelf on the Shelf, another YouTube channel, actually mentioned these in their recent video about giving advice as well. And I really stand by this advice too. Don't feel like you have to explain yourself to everyone. It's so easy to feel like you have to have a good reason for leaving in order to give people that good reason. But when it comes down to it, this is your life. You get to do what you want with your life, and you don't have to answer to anyone other than yourself and your own morals. And it's just hard because fresh into it, I remember feeling like I had to have really good explanations for everyone. But when it comes down to it, you don't owe them anything. You only owe to yourself being you. And being honest with yourself. And that is enough. And if it's not enough for them, that's okay too. Let them have their journey as well. Don't feel the rush to label yourself anything. Like, I still get people asking me like, well, what do you believe now? Like, what, you must have found something that's better than Mormonism, right? And for me, I'm straight up, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot that I'm working through, and there's a lot I'm trying to understand, and I don't have a label for myself, and I'm okay with that. Like, I honestly am, because I see myself in this situation as someone who's been taught a certain thing for a really long time and realized that wasn't feeling right anymore, and now I'm free to explore other things, and that's a beautiful process. So don't feel like you need to rush to label yourself anything. If you want to label yourself, label yourself. But definitely don't feel like you have to come up with a label just to satisfy other people. And I know I've already said this a lot. Just be careful how you talk with Mormons about what you're going through. Mormons often have a stigma that people who leave the church are very angry, bitter, evil, anti-Mormons. And if you come across to them as very angry, you are actually just feeding that narrative to them that they already believe is true, and like reconfirming to them that the church probably is true because look at you, you've left in your evil right? So now this is not me at all saying that you're not allowed to be angry. You have every right to be angry, and especially because there may have been some very, very unfortunate experiences that happened to you because of this church or because of certain family members treating you certain ways. You have every right to feel those emotions. All I'm saying is try to find a healthy person to express those emotions to. Because if you try to outlet your anger to people who are in the church, it may actually make them cling tighter to the church. And really, that's not what we want. We want to encourage everyone to live their own truth. Recently, I got advice from a friend of mine who said something that I really loved. She said, give people around you, give them permission to understand you and support you, and give them permission to not. So in your mind, it's I don't know, that just felt good to me to be able to say, you know what, I'm okay with people having the choice to be okay with me and my life choices, and also having the choice to not be okay with it. And also recognizing that when they're not okay with it, it's only because of these certain set of values that they're following that they feel are really important and that they've been taught are very, very important. So it's who am I to judge, So it just, that felt good to my heart to be able to say, I give you permission to support me and be okay with me the way I am, and I give you permission to not. And it's in my own brain, what I'm saying is that I'm okay either way. I'm okay with you supporting me, I'm okay with you not. And that's hard. That's hard, but it's that's a place to work toward. One other piece of advice I got from a friend recently that I loved was, maybe some of you won't like this, but I love it. It's write your own commandments. I love that so much because I feel in leaving the church, it's just so damn hard, and you feel so confused and so conflicted, so guilty, so just so many things, right? And it's I feel you had this structure, and as humans, our brains really like structure, and they like organization, they like things to make sense. And so what I'm in the process of right now is creating my commandments of Morgan or whatever, some morals that I want to live my life by. And that way, when I find someone who's upset with me or thinks I'm doing something bad or whatever, I go back to my set of morals that I've worked hard to feel good about, that feel good, deep down. And if I feel I'm violating anything on that list, then make changes. And if I feel I'm not, then let go of the criticism of other people. Because when it comes down to it, we're the only critic that matters. We're the only one that's in charge of our lives. And so we have to live our lives in a way that we feel good about, and that's all that can really matter. And if you're living your life in a way that you feel good about, then you have absolute permission to let go of what anyone else says, does, thinks about you. Everything else can go. I'm just on a path of self-acceptance and of being the best person I can be based on morals that feel really good to me and make sense to me. And coffee is not a bad thing on my list of morals. Sorry, it's just not. Woo! This video has been intense. In a future video, I also really want to give you guys some advice on how to talk to Mormons about your leaving the church or about your beliefs. I've been working really hard on coming up with this list for you guys on what has worked well for me and what hasn't. So I'm going to be getting that video out to you guys soon for sure. The last thing I wanted to just mention to you guys is that I'm expanding my own business outside of this YouTube world. I know you guys think I don't have a life outside of here. I do. It's just boring. I'm just kidding. So I'm actually partnering with Angie Monco from St. Louis to put some classes together online for people. I'm really, really excited about it. So we have a free class coming up on July 24th at 3 p.m. Central Time. And it's going to be how people-pleasing shows up in your parenting. I'm really excited to talk on this because I'm very passionate about it, because obviously being raised in the church, people-pleasing is you're just born people pleasers. I feel in the church, that culture just kind of encourages caring a lot about what other people think and other people's problems before yourself, and I think it's very unhealthy. So we have that free class coming up. If you'd like to know more, I have a link in the description to kind of like a demo of what that class is going to be talking about. And I also have a link where you can register for the class. And again, it is free, so hope you guys enjoy that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really, really appreciate all of your support, and especially in what a freaking difficult week this has been. So many of you reached out to me on Facebook and other things and just like poured out love and support to me, and that meant so much because this week has not been fun, but there's been a lot of good that's come out of it, and I'm very grateful. So anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, comment down below any advice you have to people who are freshly leaving the church, because they really need that advice, and I will see you guys in the next video.